Thank you. Good morning. I'm Marcus Robinson from Microsoft. First of all, I'm from the UK, from Yorkshire, in the north of the UK. You can ask me questions in Spanish, Italian, German, French, but someone else will have to translate. Hopefully, you can cope with my Yorkshire accent. My background, very much a technical person. My entire career, primarily Windows-focused. Working on infrastructure and software development projects. I ran a company and we provided outsourced IT operations along with outsourced software development services. Part of running an organization meant that I had employees. The company grew. I had to manage people. Yeah, I was managing director, CEO. That was my role. Not something I've ever really relished, because I'm a technical person at heart. The time came, someone may be aware of an opportunity at Microsoft. Hey, come and be a technical evangelist with us, because I went to community events and did a lot of speaking. Great, this is my opportunity to get away from people. I can be technical, 100% technical. I can spend my time writing talks, looking at technologies, trying new technologies. I don't have to deal with HR issues, holidays, illness, and the process of people. Okay. Soon after I joined Microsoft, the concept of hackfests was introduced. So it's very important. Someone just asked me the question about how do we keep hands-on as an evangelist with technology? Okay. And it's important to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, rather than just talk about something that. The big thing with being an evangelist is imposter syndrome. Do you actually know what you're doing? So these hackfests, the aim is to go work with an organization, generally for a week, and create a technical case study. Helps keep us skilled, enables to provide feedback to the product teams. Okay? And it also enables, obviously, the customer to use our services, such as Azure, and accelerate adoption. We have a number of technologies that we worked in. My focus, generally around the more infrastructure technologies initially, but you can see there's a wide range. Conversations of the platform, such as Aubrey's bots. Teams is in there now. We've got IoT going on, lots of machine learning and AI. And these change over time. You never quite know what's coming next. We have to adapt. And these hacks happen worldwide, some with large companies. I believe this was NEC in Japan. I'm sure Volk will correct me, because this is one of his team. Small organizations. This is one of the first ones I did. This was with an organization called Hark in Leeds, in the UK. This was sort of my getting up and running. You can see us there working with them. And they provide remote monitoring for pharmaceutical organizations and supermarkets, so things like fridges, and feed the data back. And in lots of different verticals. This one is in South Korea with a gaming company. Okay, so all different organizations. My focus became DevOps and open source technologies. So this is a scenario that I was told, look, we want to get more involved in. And it fitted very well with my background, my DevOps background. I've been doing a lot of infrastructure as code, configuration management, things like Chef, Puppet, PowerShell desired state. My background in Windows, the open source bit, was a bit of a challenge, but hey, I'm open-minded. Let's go for it. We were given this slide. This slide's in a deck. People, process, and products. How do we define DevOps at Microsoft? This union of people, processes, products, or tools. My initial impulse, I guess, was, hey, that's OK, I'm number 3. I'm going to do this number 3 bit. I'm the technical person. Then, and again, Volker's familiar with this statement, I'm sure, I was presented with this. As any large company, we have metrics and KPIs, and we had to do a certain number of these hackfests. And we have to do write-ups as a result. The 2 requirements, documentation of a value stream map exercise. What's one of those? Okay, what's a value stream map? And then even sort of more challenging, the evidence and artifacts from applying a minimum of 2 fundamental DevOps practices, I'm good with that bit, identified during the value stream map exercise. So we actually had to use this value stream map process to find out where to go and implement DevOps practices. yeah, all of a sudden it hit me. This technical evangelist role is not going to be 100% technical. But I've dealt with people in the past. Let's embrace it and go for it. I noticed the British speakers here, we like our swear words on slides. So first of all, a very brief bit of history on value stream mapping. I'm not a historian. I live for the now and the future of tech. But I think it's important to touch on some of these things. Back in the early 20th century, Toyota and their Toyota production system, looking at the continuous flow on delivery of cars off a production pipeline, became quite revolutionary. And I can remember at secondary school in my humanities lessons, learning about Nissan and their just-in-time systems. This reduction, ensuring a flow from beginning to end with as few barriers in the way as possible, removing bottlenecks. And then to the late 80s, this was documented. Taiichi Ohno wrote a book documenting the Toyota production system. This talk about lean methodologies, again relevant to car production, was coined by the Sloan Management Review from MIT on the triumph of a lean production system. And then again, The Machine That Changed the World, another book focused on car production, and how looking at the delivery pipeline and lean and removing waste, which we'll talk a bit more about later, was really an interesting concept to look into, dig into deeper. And then lean in software development became talked about, and these books by, I think it's Mary and Tom Poppendick, Lean Software Development, an Agile Toolkit, and Implementing Lean Software Development, where a lot of this has stemmed from, came out. Okay. And off the back of this, in this book, it talks about the lean software development tools. And up there, we've got value stream mapping. Okay. So that's a little bit about the history, where it's come from. But what is a value stream map? Let's take it, as the word is. Let's look at a stream. The end goal of anything we do is to get value to our end users and our customers. Okay? They could be internal users. They could be external users. Okay? We need to get value from what we do. Hopefully, we all agree on that. Then, at the extreme other end, we have an idea. Okay? It could be a customer says they want a feature. It could be internally. Someone says, hey, we need to add this new feature to our product. It could be a support call, an alert that triggers an issue that needs to be resolved. And the customers aren't going to get the value from that until it's actually resolved. Okay? And a path happens between the two, doesn't it? We have our idea, and we get that value. But what happens in that gap in between? This is something we do in, day out. How often do we actually look at what goes on? So this is a value stream map. This one that someone's drawn up of a manufacturing process. We can see different stages. Okay, the products come in, the parts come in at the beginning, roughing, machining, assembly, and then eventually shipping, and that value gets delivered. Now, these value stream maps can look very different. Depends who puts them together. I don't think it really matters that much. I'm sure there's some purists out there that go, hey, it should be this format, you should have these things in these places. But as long as we get this flow through our system, I think that's the main thing, and diagram that. This is one, again, from our team, but showing software development. The customer at the end is the receiver of value. We can see at the beginning, sort of request comes in from the help desk. Can we see this up here? Yeah, the request comes in from the help desk. There's a feature review request, architecture features, work planning, development, testing, development, test, production, and eventually that value is achieved when our customer is informed. Okay? And these vary massively, look very different. Intention's the same. Okay? One of the members of our team said they think they managed 25 meters of whiteboard or flip chart paper. They can be quite significant. Obviously, you decide on what's relevant, and we'll come on to that shortly. Again, this one we can see the early stages, using resellers in here, initiate the feature all the way through, and at the end, it reaches the customer. Okay, at the top. And here's another one in process. This team decided to transfer it to electronically. I can't really see the point in that. I guess if you're going to work on it time and time again, it might be worthwhile. Sorry, Elton, you've lost your beard. Shock. Yeah, so this is in Visio. Someone's drawn that out, but I don't see the need to do this, but it's important. So why are we doing this? Aids visualization, gives a rich picture of our software development process. Enables our different teams. When we do these exercises, we get people from different parts of the organization to come in and talk about what they're doing. So it fosters discussion across the teams within the company. We'll talk about waste in more detail, but it really enables us to identify areas of waste, a common language that can easily be understood, all the way across the team. We can be a developer, we could be a C-level exec, coming in and having a look at this map, say, hey, this is where my staff's time's going. And most importantly for us, and for the customers I'd like to think we're working with, is it helps us to identify where we can reduce bottlenecks, optimize our deployment and delivery process. Where could we actually look at using DevOps practices to improve this process? Okay, so how? And this is the way we did it, the way we were, I guess, trained to do it. I've seen people do it in lots of different ways. First thing I would go in and do is a process, okay, very high level, because if you try and map every little single point, you'll be here for weeks. We would generally take about a day to do this exercise, which is not a lot of time. We can see, this example here, we've got up to 35 different sections. If that was, I can see quite easily we could get above 25 meters of paper, using that. This example here, what I've actually done, we've gone and grouped this one here into requirements, development, release to testing, and release sign-off at the end. And again, this was an interesting one, which we'll talk about a bit more detail later. This is a small startup. But we can see planning, dev, test, then they go back to dev again. And then do some testing again, which sort of makes sense. So it's really useful to put out these bullets first and group them together. And again, this notation. So at each stage we're going to map. We're going to look at lead time, process time, and wait time. So the lead time is the total of the process time, plus any waiting time before then. And who's involved? Okay, who's involved in this process? Who can actually do it? So let's have a look at some examples of us doing this in the real world. Key thing is, and this was weird for me to start with, we map the process from right to left. So we start with where we're going and make our way back to the beginning. I think, why do we do this? And I couldn't get my head around this the first time I did it. Dependencies. It's great to look at a step and go, hey, how did we get there? What had to be complete before we could actually do that? Because if you go the other way, it's easy to forget things that happened in the background. Okay, so we always go right to left. It's also really important at this stage, this is a retrospective. Yeah? Talk of the future is banned. First time I walk into these organizations, 90% of the time, the first thing they say to me is Kubernetes. Yeah? No. Kubernetes isn't the answer. Yeah? Time and time, containers, Kubernetes, people want to talk about at the moment. Yeah? No. Let's get back to basics. What are you doing at the moment? So we talk through the process sequentially. Fact-finding. Okay. What's gone on? So each of these larger boxes is a major stage in the process with who's involved and the time. And then we've looked at putting a bit more detail into that. So what's actually going on underneath the covers? Now, we can see here we've got some deployment, some dev, planning, and also we were down here in the sales area. Okay? It's important to look at every part of the business, not just our development process, but how do these ideas get onto our backlog? Why are we doing them in the first place? Again, so back to implementing lean software development, talks about types of waste in software delivery. Muda, the Japanese word, I think, for wastefulness. Okay, and these are the types of waste that we're looking to identify in our delivery process. Okay, we've got partially done work. Who's, does some work and then it never goes anywhere. You get to a certain point, then you have to move on to something else. At what point does that work get into production or get provide value to our end users. Until it does, what's the point of doing it? You know, it's sat there. Has that been wasted time? Obviously, there might be reasons we're doing proof of concepts and things, but partially done work is generally quite wasteful. Extra processes. Are we doing things that are unnecessary? You know, being pulled into, well, this is one of my, especially at Microsoft, meetings. You know, are we having to do extra documentation and jump through extra loops and things to get things done? Extra features. Are we adding features? Again, I hope we talked about this earlier. Are we adding features into our software that we don't actually need? You know, let's do them when we need them. Why is it going to, if this feature is going to delay our delivery by 6 months, you might think that's a long time, but you know, when I come onto the case studies, 6 months isn't necessarily a long time. Yeah, let's not waste time doing them. Task switching. Anybody have to do task switching when developing? Yeah? It's not great, is it? Okay, one to another. We see these graphs, I've seen them tweeted out with developers' productivity goes along, then all of a sudden, and it takes another half hour to get back to speed. Task switching isn't great. Waiting. Are we waiting for other people to complete operations? Somebody need to sign off on something? Do you have to wait for some code from another developer? Okay. Motion. Okay. Things having to be moved around, and defects. Have we actually got bugs in our code? What are we doing about testing? And management activities, and are people taking over? And heroics is another one we look at. So we get all these types of waste, okay, and we're going to try and identify them. So it's time for the red pen. So we did that in black, so you can see red pen in hand. We're going to identify the types of waste. Always write them out so everyone can see what they are. And these types of waste are identified. And it's really important that everybody is involved in this. Okay, can we see here, we go down back to the sales area. And I'll talk into more detail about this actual map later that I did with an organization. But where can we see waste? And it's encourage people to not just identify waste in their area, but other people's areas. Okay, look, we don't want any negativity in the room about different teams are doing it this way and they shouldn't do. Keep an open mind, but look, hey, let's identify where we potentially think we've got waste. Look, here's another example. We've got the type of waste up here, and we're going through identifying where we think we've been wasteful. Same again. See, we try and do this in a consistent way. Yeah, as I said, it's important to be open. We're not in the game of blaming people. We're just documenting. This team actually here was a result of an acquisition I'm going to come on to later. And a lot of them, they'd spoke on the phone, but they'd not really done anything together. So it was a real good way for them to sit together and say, here, this is what we're doing. Or here, what are we actually doing? And how can we improve on what we're doing? Okay. It's really important to be open. And tech debt. We often find a lot of tech debt in these processes. I find it really important to try and highlight these. Okay. Where we're just putting things, spending time doing things because we haven't got the right process in place. But it's still really important not to talk about the future yet. Look at scrap rate. So what point how are we having to scrap what we've done and go back to an earlier stage in our process because of defects upstream? Okay. How many times do we have to repeat our tests that might take a number of hours? Because we've got an issue upstream. How many times are we doing a deployment that fails because we've got an issue upstream? Let's try and identify these things. And then at the end, group our different processes in quite large areas. This just helps the maths as much as anything. I haven't done this in every scenario. So sum up the lead time and process time for each. So how long does this actual process take from that idea at the top, when that first idea, be it a phone call, that contract that's been signed, when that idea comes to getting to that point where it's giving our end users value? Okay, how long does it take? And at this point, because we go through it from, explain through the process, we can add in any missing points. Okay. Yep, so add them up so you can see your process time, 7 days with a day of wait would be 8 days. Add them up and total them. Eventually, it's time for the green pen. This is when we allow talk of the future. If they want to talk about containers, let them talk about containers. Yeah. How can we improve on what we've done? You see, a lot of activity. Look, our different parts of our systems, how can we improve? It could be technical things. It could be people things. You know, someone saying, look, hey, I'm being dragged into these scenarios, you know, these conversations, these meetings, and I don't want to be doing this. I want to be doing this. Eliminate all talk of we can't do this, and no, because we do it this way. We just let everybody get their inputs down. A lot of people, this is quite empowering, because developers that are code and don't get much say, they find this great. Okay, it's really important we have in the room as much of a mix as possible. Yeah, be bold. Nothing's out of the, not possible. Why not scrap the pipeline and start again? Why not scrap the product? And this is a discussion we had with the customer. Is this product fit for the future? Does it need to be completely re-engineered from the ground up? So I'm going to go into case studies. First of all, I think it's important to say thank you to the customers that have been involved in this process, and it enables me to come and talk about it. And the other thing I'd say is, nature of retrospective, you're going to find problems. That's what we're there to do, is to identify areas where we can improve. But all these organizations, there's 3 organizations I've chosen I'm going to talk about. They've got software in production, they're successful organizations or becoming successful organizations. So although I might be overcritical at times, they are delivering software successfully. So this first case study, okay, good one to start with. It's a small startup. It was hard to define a process. The development team existed of 1/2 developers. Okay. Luke, you can see his name appears quite a few times. I had to really drag this out of them. Okay, what is the process? We had the CEO in the room who was putting the money into this project, the development team, and more of a marketing person. Let's look at a few points. Because Luke did most of the dev work, what happens if he's not around? Well, I said, what if Luke doesn't come into work tomorrow? End of project. It's not an ideal situation, is it? They'd not thought about this. They had genuinely not thought about this. He could afford 1 developer. That's what they had the budget for. I said, well, even though you can only afford 1 guy, what can we do to mitigate this? Yeah. Typical startup thing. Lots of time spent refining features. So, development happens, Luke could deploy it. Then you go into testing, so the other developer and the CEO will look at testing. It's a manual process. They'd load it up in a browser. This is a web application. And then say, hey, this doesn't work. Oh, not just this doesn't work. Hey, we don't want this to work like this. We want it to work like that. So what then happens is Luke stops doing what he was doing. Okay. So we've got some task switching because he has to wait for it to be deployed, and then make some tweaks. And then we go around and round and round again. So there's multiple and multiple iterations, developer, deployment, CEO, checking things, going, hey, no, I want this to work this way instead. And be going on like this for months and months. What's the problem? What's the cause of this? It's pure definition of features. This tweaks, defects. It's actually not issues with what's been produced. It's defects in the spec. Okay? The actual specification the developers were given wasn't sufficient. Manual UI testing. Okay? Again, 1 person, this is H for heroics, Andy is in there. They're using Trello, but all the testing was happening manually. It's an obvious one, isn't it, to sort out? Now, you might say, this is a small startup, why is it relevant? Okay, let's come back here. Why is it relevant? Does anybody see this situation in their workplace? Is anybody a single developer? No? So why is it relevant? Now, I've been working with an organization in the UK for a number of months now, and I see this process day in, day out. They have a DevOps engineer in their team. Okay, there's probably about 20 developers and one DevOps guy. Yeah? He's very much like Luke. Okay? They say, do this, set this up in this way. We're going to do it this way. He goes and does it, and then it changes. And it's coming to the end, and they've got deadlines. So this startup didn't have deadlines as such. They were trying to get a product into production. It's taking longer and longer and longer. But with the organization I'm working with, they've got deadlines. It's suddenly come to the deadline, and they've gone, right, we've got 8 days in a sprint. We've got 30 man days for the DevOps guy to do. Okay? So it comes down to this planning. How do you have redundancy and plan from the beginning what the features need to be and how long do they take to be delivered? This next one, public sector customer. Very different way of working. So this has been a product that's been in production, providing services to customers for years and years and years and years and years. First thing to point out, Ed. Similar to Luke in a way. So Ed helps put together the requirements and design. He manages the backlog. He's the only person that signs off on releases. And is the only person that negotiates with the business about when can this product be released for our users to start using it. What happens if Ed's away? What happens if Ed's away to this process? It stops. It grinds to a halt. Okay? 3-week lead time between signing off on a release and the actual release. So in this organization, we've got this SSO, which is not single sign-on, it's shared services organization. They were deploying onto VMware infrastructure on-prem. Okay. They had to speak to the shared services organization and schedule a time because they couldn't do continuous deployment. The system had to be taken offline to do the release. What has to happen before it's taken offline? There has to be backups made. Who does these backups? It's shared services. All has to be done out of hours, and it would take about 3 weeks to get this scheduled in, to get Ed scheduled in with the developers with shared services. Anybody see scenarios like this? Okay, yeah, some people. Hopefully we're starting to move away from this. But yeah. Significant differences between test and production environments. So at midnight when they're doing their out-of-hours deployment, this is true, they go to deploy. Believe it or not, production was on, I think, SUSE Linux, 32-bit. They were developing and testing on Windows. Yeah? It might sound strange, but we come across these things. So every time they were deploying, there was things that weren't happening right. And their release process. So look, where's your release scripts and things? They had a sheet of paper with bulleted steps that they followed. Okay, time and time again. Does it work? Yeah, of course it works. I pushed it and pushed it. I know this release process, nearly every single time, fell down. Okay? Is this obvious to people? Yeah, but it still happens out there. So there's no confidence that when they go to do a deployment that it's actually going to work. This organization was using Visual Source Safe for source control. Okay, lack of branching, delays waiting for people to finish working before they could check in code, and incomplete code was making its way to production. We can see the wasteful areas highlighted here. In this scenario, we had a quite wide range of people from the organization. We had the product manager, the Q&A lead, we had 3 or 4 developers. Question got asked, so why are we still using this tech? There's not the budget. They actually had the licenses for all this already. There was one dependency, I believe it was a Postgres driver of some sort, that cost about, what, 400, 500 pounds, euros, I guess. On the day, the product owner got his credit card out and said, problem solved. Yeah? They've been doing it this way for about 4 years. Okay? They've been waiting for this change for 4 years. It took getting the right people in the room and doing this process for him to get his card out and go, done. Yeah? If it's wasting us this much time, yeah, How long does this take? 6 weeks, this development process for a single feature. Okay. An acquisition. So what I haven't really touched on, I guess, and I should have done, is each one of these, at the start, we choose a scenario. When we bullet out the points, we choose a feature that was released. Okay? It's really important to do that at the beginning, because otherwise, people say, look, in this situation, this happens, or in that situation, that happens. So this instance, the team chose the release of it was actually a chat widget on a website for interaction with customer support. Something very obvious from this. Now, this organization, large enterprise organization in the UK, and they've made an acquisition. Okay, very different working practices, and they're just starting to work together. And these are the ones who'd seen in the pictures earlier on. What's the problem? We haven't got all the right people in the room. Yeah? We've got lots of developers and a bit about release and deployment. When it comes to sales, proof of concept, and planning, they were too busy. They were too busy selling. We invited them. I spoke to them. I tried to get them in the room. No. I even turned up on the day expecting them to be there, because we knew this was the scenario we were going to cover. They weren't there. Okay. So yeah, it's really important to try and get buy-in of everybody that needs to be in the room. So the first thing that came up, let's come up to the total time. So on this scenario, we're looking at, it was an 8-week sales process, 3-week proof of concept, 2 weeks of planning, 18 weeks of dev time, 2 weeks sort of the release process and then 1 week to deployment. Okay, quite a long process. It's around about 6 months. I total dip somewhere on here. Yeah, it's up here. So a long, long time. This feature had been created by a salesperson. They'd been out with a customer. They were about to sign a contract in the region of £1 million. Okay? The customer said, we need this feature. So what did the salesperson say? Yes, we can do that. Yeah? Sign on the line. Yeah? And this team coined this phrase, or other people use this phrase, not on the lorry. It should never have been there in the first place. Yeah? But this customer was very impactful to the company's success. Yeah, issues can be involved way before technology is ever introduced. How could we have avoided this? Yeah? The dev teams, or the right people in the team, need to be invited into these conversations at an early stage. Hey, is this possible? No? Can we actually do this? Can we deliver this? And then if we come back here, what actually happened then was they pulled some devs off. So developers are getting involved with the proof of concept and planning stage. The sales guy used to be involved in a technical role. He said, hey, Joe, come over here and build this proof of concept for me. Yeah? Sort of shadow IT, I guess. In the background, all this was done without anybody who was involved in the actual release and QA process, and customer support wasn't aware that this feature was coming. Yeah, multiple manual deployments. Lots of waiting and manual steps. So you can see here, this is our development process. I asked them to actually list out which tools they use, which tooling they used. They started off with things like Visual Studio, and there's a focus on open source technologies and engagements. Lots of open source projects. There's some Java with Eclipse on here. And it started getting longer and longer. All tools that we all use. I said, hold on, how many of these are there? They reckon they can get up to about 250 different tools and open source projects they were using, which is good if they're serving the right purpose, but all the dependencies and updates and things was taking a lot of time. Manual process. So every time a developer had to set up their environment, the process was manual. Okay, we see manual process here. All the builds and pushes were manual. Using Grunt and Jenkins. Again, they were triggering all this manually. And then redeployment of the whole environment on their machine. So this is times 6. This is for testers. So there were 6 different testers working on this product. Every time they got a new feature to test, they had to redeploy 6 times, which took them a day or so. And this cycle, imagine how many sprints in this 18-week period. They had to keep redoing that. And again, they were redeploying there. And then the Jenkins builds, and we'll come on to the Jenkins build in a moment and look in that in a bit more detail. But lots of manual steps. Some bits were automated. They start to use Vagrant and things, but very much a manual process. Long-running builds. So this team are using Jenkins. Cool. Build was taking 8 hours. It's a long time. Yeah, a long, long time. Not only was it taking 8 hours, but it failed about 50% of the time. Okay, so they'd set it off at the end of the day. They'd come in the next morning. Has the build worked or not? They'd set it off again. They wouldn't know till the end of the next day. Not good. What was the cause of this? There's a few things. Lots of redundant tests. Aged artifacts, they've just not been given the time to fix these issues. They never had the chance to do it. Tech debt, I guess, in a way. Queued builds, SAN issues. There's actually an underlying infrastructure issue. Their SAN was causing these builds to go slow. Lots and lots of problems. Not great. Manual deployments and production. So this organization has about 30 or 40 customers, big enterprise customers. Okay? Each customer is running on different versions of the software. Okay? Each customer has their own deployment, generally on-site. There's a few in a cloud-shared hosted environment. Every single deployment, other than the hosted ones, was done manually using RDP to Windows servers, okay, and copy and pasting deployment artifacts across. Is this consistent? Is this a good way to go? No, not at all. Every config, every release was different. It made them lots of money with professional services, because they were constantly involved with the customer, but it's not the way to go. Lots and lots of time wasted. And because of their business model, customers only got a new version of the software if they paid for it. Yeah? You can see why Microsoft Windows started to go to this sort of evergreen. So at what point do they actually receive this value? Never. I put infinity. It's like, look, some of these customers are never going to receive the value. And it isn't just an issue of, look, customers not receiving value, but the organizations having to support and manage and have spin-up test environments for every single version of this software. So what do I like about this scenario? This very much shows that the business model and how the business works is key. Okay, you also need to look at how the software is delivered and maintained before making business decisions, and vice versa. This organization are now moving towards more of a SaaS model to get rid of all these different versions of software. It's not the fault of the dev team. The fact that this took 6 months to get this chat widget out, and this is true, and a lot of developer resource. Look, it's business issues we need to look at. So I think it's all very well talking about this. We need to touch very, very briefly on what general things do we do to help. Look, with Microsoft, we're in there to increase adoption of Azure and things like that. As far as tooling, this last example, I wanted them to use Jenkins, but the company that purchased them were actually using Microsoft tooling anyway, so they didn't want to use Jenkins anymore, which was a bit of a disappointment to me. But Visual Studio Team Services, which is ultimately, we're just improving planning and adding automation. You can do whichever tooling you want. Okay, automation, automation, automation. Hopefully, you've come along to this conference, you know that this is key. There's lots and lots of talks about this today. And the other key thing that we did consistently was adding consistency from development environments all the way through to production, using technologies or practices such as infrastructure as code, configuration management, the ability to spin up environments at the click of a button. And obviously, cloud helps with that. So my learnings. Okay, everyone's different. Every organization is different. Every time I walked through a door and did one of these, I would see different things. And it amazed me how little time organizations spend actually doing retrospectives back up what they've done. There's churning and churning, churning and churning, because they're looking at how active are the developers. They don't actually stop and go back. How much tech debt is there in these organizations? So it doesn't take much time to sort out. People just need to be given a bit of a time to just stand back and look at what's going on. We need to have everybody involved in these discussions. It's not something just the developers can talk about and fix. You need to get buy-in, sales, support, both ends of the chain. How can we improve these things? This was a great way to identify initial steps for implementing DevOps practices. Straight away, we can see where the time is spent. Okay, where are our biggest issues? We go, hey, we're not going to tackle that whole thing at once. Let's introduce CI/CD. Let's change the way our features get onto our backlog. Look, what are these small things that we can do? The driver for change, and we've got people in the room that have never before been empowered to do this. The hacks that we've run as a result have been really well focused. We could go in at the beginning of the week and know exactly what we're going to try and achieve by the end. Okay? We're going to do some infrastructure as code and get them deploying very quickly. And it's actually interesting, that last customer have just got back in touch with me yesterday after it's been over 12 months. And they're still making transition as a result of that value stream map. Okay? There was a technical question they asked. They're still working off it. And I want to value stream map everything. Not just software projects, internal processes. You can imagine at Microsoft we have lots of internal processes. I want to give them all a deeper look. Here's some feedback from the participants. So the value stream mapping exercise wasn't just useful in terms of laying out the technologies and processes. It was also a bit of trust and familiarization exercise for the teams and their individuals. We found it extremely valuable. They'd never got together and talked like this before. And actually, isolating and realizing how much waste was interesting to me. I knew there was quite a lot, but identifying exactly where and how much there was essentially a green light for further work into improving the build system. This last organization, with the 8-hour builds, 16-hour builds, straight away the week after, said, stop what you're doing, stop developing, I want the whole team to sort this out. Yeah? They've been putting up with this problem for a long time. I'll tweet these slides out later. If anybody's interested in reading more details, what we're doing with these projects, there is a library of all these projects with GitHub pages with screenshots and actually the technical implementation details away as well. And there's projects from all around the world. Some additional reading if you want to know more about these things. A few books there that value stream mapping has become a lot more common. Who's done value stream mapping before? A few people in the room? Cool. It's becoming more common. If you haven't, really, really think about it and give it a go. You'll notice my job title's now changed. As of 2 weeks ago, I'm now back to people and process. As a result of doing this, I think, why are we doing things this way? Yeah. So now I've taken it upon myself to actually try and make some change internally. Yeah, hope that was interesting. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now or speak to me later.
Hi. I don't know if you have talked about it before, and maybe it's a problem about my English understanding. I would like to know all those process for drawing the value stream. How many times you do it with a customer? Is something you do only at the beginning? And also, how many time do you spend in defining?
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. So we were looking to do a 1-week engagement generally. We're going to work with a customer for 1 week. So before that, I should have made it clear, so it would be weeks generally before. We would go and do 1 day with a customer. We'd spend a few hours looking at their architecture at the beginning. And we'd spend most of the day doing this value stream map. So we'd do it on one feature or one issue that they've had to solve once. And then we'd go and look at it. But you could actually do this as many times as you want for many different features. Not just features, but support issues. You have a support issue. How was that issue resolved? Could we improve our issue resolution process? Yeah? Cool. Okay. Thank you. Another one.
I would like to know how you gain certainty on the numbers. I mean, when you have to make something in 1 week,
yes,
how you get sure that people are not lying on the number of time they rework, they do for example, they switch. How you put the medicine part?
They're only cheating themselves if they lie, aren't they? Yeah, I think it's that getting that ethos in the room, that everyone's going to be open and honest. Okay. And that's the whole thing about choosing a real-world scenario, something that's happened. They go, look, sometimes we might take a week, sometimes it might take 2 months. When we go back to, look, in this certain scenario, how long did it take? Okay? Yeah, when you were doing that feature or that bug, how long did it take? So take them back to a specific instance. Cool.
Thanks a lot.